Hello, welcome to our channel, and this is the fresh video. It's about the new Apple original series, Pluribus, and it's a review from a Marxist perspective. We like to inform you that this video may contain spoiler. Watch on your own risk.
Yeah, definitely a good warning to start with,
And
especially, with anything from Vince Gilligan.
right, because going in, it's going to be dense, lots of layers.
Exactly. Moral questions, twists, and probably stuff we won't fully get until the end.
Oh,
And Pluribus is already showing that complexity.
absolutely. So let's properly dive in. We're looking at Pluribus, the new show everyone's talking about. It just dropped on Apple TV Plus, premiered November 7th, 2025.
And it's Vince Gilligan's latest. We know his style, that sort of Vince Gilligan logic where everything feels deliberate, every name, every choice.
It really does. And just for context for everyone listening, we're recording this right after episode 2 has aired.
Yeah, so early days still. There are 10 episodes planned in total for the season. The next one's out November 14th.
So we're still piecing things together, but the reaction so far, pretty huge.
Oh, absolutely. It hit 100% on Rotten Tomatoes right out of the gate based on those initial critic reviews. That says something.
It definitely does. And the cast is stellar, too. You've got Rhea Seehorn leading as Carol.
Who was amazing in Better Call Saul, of course.
Totally. And then Carolina Wydra as Zosia, Carlos Manuel Vesga as Manusos. It's a strong lineup.
And the genre mix is, well, it's ambitious. Drama, sci-fi, comedy, and horror.
That screams Gilligan, doesn't it? Juggling all those tones.
It really does. It sets you up for something unpredictable. Now, the core idea, the synopsis that places like IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes are giving out,
Yeah, what's the official line?
it says the show follows the most miserable person on earth who is Carol, and the one who must save the world from happiness.
Okay. Save the world from happiness. That phrase alone,
It just hooks you
it
up.
completely flips the script on utopia. It makes you immediately ask, what kind of happiness needs saving from?
Exactly.
Mm.
And to start really digging into the show's critique, we have to look at that title, Pluribus. Yeah, the title is definitely the key. It's like the entry point for the whole analysis we're doing today.
Because it sounds familiar, but maybe not in the way you first think.
Right. There's almost certainly a double meaning here. And it connects the show directly to, well, centuries of ideological battles.
So the first meaning is probably the one most people in the U.S. might recognize.
E pluribus un, out of many, one, the U.S. motto.
Representing that ideal of melting pot unity. Many individuals or states forming one nation, usually under a kind of liberal capitalist framework.
Precisely. Unity through a sort of accepted national or economic identity. But then there's the second layer, the older one.
And this is where it gets really interesting for our Marxist perspective.
Yeah. The title Pluribus seems to be a direct reference, a deliberate nod to a specific historical document, an encyclical called Qui Pluribus.
We looked into this, and the source material connecting these is titled Pluribus Communism, Papal Condemnation. So the link is pretty explicit.
Absolutely. It immediately puts the show into conversation with historical, religious opposition to collectivist ideas, which is fascinating for a sci-fi show.
So let's unpack that historical piece, Qui Pluribus. Why is a papal letter from the 1840s relevant to a show about, space colonies and weird happiness?
Because Qui Pluribus, the full title is On Faith and Religion, was issued by Pope Pius IX. The date was November 9th, 1846.
Okay.
And the crucial thing is, this document was the very first time that a pope, in an official encyclical, explicitly named and condemned communism.
Wow. So this is ground zero for the church's official fight against communism.
In terms of naming it directly in such a high-level document, yes. It's a hugely significant historical marker. It's the formal opening shot from a very powerful part of the ideological superstructure against what they saw as a rising, dangerous idea.
And whenever we look at the superstructure, religion, law, culture from a Marxist angle, the question is always,
what material conditions is it defending? What's the economic base it's trying to protect?
exactly. So what was the church protecting in 1846 by condemning communism?
Well, the answer is pretty clearly tied to the material base, to the economic structure of the time. The church, as a major ideological force, was essentially acting to defend the existing order, the property-owning class.
So it wasn't just about atheism, although that was part of it.
That was definitely a major concern, yes. But Pius IX's condemnation went deeper. It targeted the very foundation of the system that supported the church and the ruling classes of the era. It was about power and wealth.
He actually called communism a doctrine most opposed to the very natural law. What were the specific arguments he used?
Okay, so according to the sources, like the work by A. Alexander Stumvoll, mentioned in A Living Tradition, the Pope's reasoning had two main pillars.
Right.
First, obviously, the denial of God and religious faith. Taking away God, you take away a key tool for social control and justifying the existing hierarchy.
Makes sense. And the second?
The second, and this is absolutely crucial from our perspective, was communism's explicit denial of the right to private property.
Ah, okay. There it is, the core issue. Private property is seen in Marxism as the root of exploitation under capitalism.
Precisely. And the Church, in 1846, was positioning itself as the divine defender of that right. They saw an attack on private property as an attack on God's order, on natural law itself.
So the fear wasn't just theoretical, it was about societal collapse.
Oh, the language is strong.
Yeah.
Pius IX warned that if communism took hold, it would lead to, and this is a quote, the complete destruction of everyone's laws, government property, and even of human society itself.
Wow. Human society itself.
But we need to pause and analyze that. When he says human society, what does he really mean?
He likely means the existing social order, the specific way society was structured at that time.
Exactly. He feared the collapse of the bourgeois society, the society built on private ownership and class division. He feared the loss of the legal system, the government structures, everything that upheld that specific order.
So, the laws and government structures that benefited the ruling class, and by extension, the church's institutional power.
Precisely. Communism's threat to private property was seen as an existential threat to that entire system. Any challenge to property was framed as a challenge to divine and human laws. It's really a textbook case of the superstructure using ideology to protect the material interests of the dominant class. They saw this new idea as fundamentally dangerous.
And it wasn't happening in a vacuum, right? 1846 was a turbulent time.
Absolutely not. Europe, and Italy in particular, was in turmoil. The encyclical came out amidst widespread civil unrest.
What was driving that?
A lot of it was driven by nationalists fighting for Italian unification, the Risorgimento. And many of these nationalist movements were strongly anti-clerical, seeing the Pope and the Papal States as obstacles.
So the Pope was feeling pressure from multiple directions.
Definitely. In Qui Pluribus, he didn't just condemn communism. He condemned a whole list of perceived errors. Rationalism, pantheism, other forms of socialism, and significantly, anti-clerical secret societies.
Like who? Who were these societies?
Groups like the Carbonari and later Young Italy, which included famous figures like Giuseppe Mazzini and Giuseppe Garibaldi. These groups were often Republican, nationalist, anti-monarchist, and very much against the Church's temporal power. They were kind of filling the space left after Freemasonry had been suppressed in some areas.
So the Pope lumped communism in with nationalism and these secret societies.
It seems he saw them all as part of the same dangerous trend, a multi-pronged attack on traditional authority, on stability, on the Church's control over social and political life. Whether it was challenging borders, challenging God, or challenging private property, it was all seen as undermining the established order.
Okay, that historical context is crucial. In 1846, the fear was collectivism destroying property and the existing social structure. Now let's jump back to the show, Pluribus.
Right, because the show seems to take that fear and, well, twist it. In Pluribus, it looks like some form of collectivism has been imposed, maybe solving the property problem, but it's created a completely different crisis.
The crisis of happiness, the loss of something essential about being human.
Exactly. And we need to explain this clearly, especially for listeners maybe newer to Marxist ideas or even just the broad strokes of world history. The way this change happens in the show is fundamentally important to the critique.
So remind us of the core event in the show's backstory. How did Earth get this way?
The premise, as hinted in the setup, is that some kind of advanced outer space colony, maybe benevolent, maybe not, decided Earth was a mess.
Probably because of capitalism, war, climate change, the usual suspects.
Presumably.
Yeah.
And their solution was to step in and apply communism to Earth, supposedly to save us.
Okay, an external intervention. Aliens imposing communism.
And right there, from a Marxist perspective, alarms should be going off. Because that's not how genuine communism, as theorized by Marx, is supposed to come about.
Explain that. Why is the method so important?
Because Marx saw communism not as some ideal blueprint you could just, download out of a society. It had to emerge organically.
From where?
From the internal contradictions and class struggles within a highly developed capitalist system. It requires the working class, the proletariat, developing critical consciousness.
Meaning they understand their own exploitation and their power to change things.
Exactly. And then they actively seize the means of production, overthrow the capitalist state, and build a new mode of production themselves. It has to be an act of self-liberation by the oppressed class.
Not a gift from technologically superior aliens.
Definitely not. What the show seems to be depicting is a form of, well, cosmic paternalism, or even worse, imperialism.
How so? Imperialism usually means nations conquering nations.
But the dynamic is the same. A more powerful entity imposes its political, economic, and ideological structure onto a weaker one, even if the stated goal is to save the target population.
Think about historical colonialism. European powers arriving in Africa or Asia claiming they were bringing civilization, religion, order, while actually imposing control and extracting resources.
It's the same pattern. The space colony arrives, maybe with the genuinely good intentions, end poverty, stop wars, fix the environment. But the act of imposition itself is fundamentally anti-liberation. It bypasses the struggle and agency of the people on Earth.
It's like a technological or celestial version of the white man's burden. We, the advanced ones, know what's best for you, the struggling planet.
Precisely. So the question of whether their motives are good is almost beside the point when you're talking about genuine freedom. If collective well-being is delivered from on high, rather than won through the population's own struggle and consciousness.
Is it really freedom, or just a different kind of cage, maybe a more comfortable one?
That's the core question. It feels like a shift in who holds the power, replacing Earth's capitalists with these off-world saviors. True liberation, in a Marxist sense, has to be seized by the people themselves. It can't be bestowed.
Which makes the resulting happiness in this pluribus system immediately suspect. It's potentially a manufactured happiness built on compliance, not genuine human flourishing or agency.
The whole foundation seems non-revolutionary, even anti-revolutionary, because it skips the necessary step of the people liberating themselves.
So thinking about this external imposition, this idea of a space colony applying communism to Earth to save it, this raises a huge question for anyone watching and for us here.
Right. And it's something we really want to put to you, the listener. Thinking about this specific scenario in the show, this outer space colony decided to apply communism to our planet to save it. Do you think that is inherently good or bad for humanity?
It really forces you to think about what matters more, right? The outcome, maybe a peaceful, stable planet, or the process, the agency, the struggle.
Where do you fall on that? It's a central tension the show seems to be exploring.
And this tension is embodied in the main character, Carol, Rhea Seehorn's character. She's the most miserable person on Earth.
And in this world supposedly saved by happiness, her misery becomes, well, it becomes subversive. It's the spanner in the works.
She's the one who refuses to fit into the imposed unity, the forced contentment. She's the contradiction.
In this manufactured e pluribus unum, this unity forced from above, she represents the pluribus that refuses to become unum.
So how do we analyze her misery from a Marxist perspective? It's not just personal unhappiness, presumably?
I think we have to connect it to the concept of alienation. Marx talked about how capitalism alienates workers in several ways, preventing true human fulfillment.
Right, the 4 types. Let's quickly recap them and see how they might apply here, even in this supposed post-capitalist, imposed communist world.
Okay. First, alienation from the product of your labor. Under capitalism, you make something, but it belongs to the owner, not you. In pluribus, well, maybe goods are plentiful, maybe needs are met. But does Carol have any meaningful connection to what's produced or how society runs if it's all managed by the space colony?
She's still alienated from the outcome. It's not her creation or humanity's collective creation in a meaningful sense.
Exactly. Second, alienation from the act of labor itself. Work under capitalism is often forced, repetitive, soul-crushing drudgery done for someone else's profit. In pluribus, maybe work is different or maybe non-existent. But if the purpose of any activity is just to maintain this imposed, static, perfect system,
then it lacks meaning. It's not fulfilling, freely chosen creative activity. It's just function.
Right. Third, alienation from other people, from our fellow workers or humans. Capitalism pits us against each other in competition. What about pluribus? If this unity is forced, if genuine disagreement or conflict is suppressed in the name of happiness,
then the connections aren't real. It's a superficial unity, maybe masking deep isolation. You're together, but alone in your enforced contentment.
And that leads to the fourth, maybe the most profound, alienation from our human essence, what Marx called our species being, our potential for creativity, consciousness, social connection, and freely shaping our world.
If the pluribus system suppresses critical thought, authentic emotion, including pain and dissatisfaction, and individual agency in the name of uniform happiness.
Then it's fundamentally dehumanizing. It
Mhm.
strips away what makes us human. And in that context, Carol's misery isn't a personal failing.
What? A sign of life.
Almost, yeah. It's like the last flickering ember of her unalienated self. Her refusal, even if unconscious, to be reduced to just a happy, compliant part of the machine. It's her humanity crying out against the engineered perfection.
So her unhappiness becomes her critical consciousness, even if she doesn't frame it that way. It's the grit in the oyster, the thing that shows the system isn't perfect.
It's the only authentic response left, perhaps. She's resisting the core ideological demand of the system. Be happy.
Okay, let's dig deeper into this dystopian happiness itself. If the colony managed to create a world without poverty or war, but achieved it by what? Conditioning, technology, removing negative emotions.
Yeah, we're firmly in the territory of false consciousness.
Explain that concept for listeners who might be new to it.
False consciousness is basically the idea that the ruling ideology of a society, the ideas of the ruling class, can shape people's minds so that they don't understand the true nature of their own situation, especially their exploitation or oppression.
They accept the system that harms them because they're taught to see it as natural, inevitable, or even good.
Exactly. So, in Pluribus, if the space colony has engineered a society where people are materially comfortable but lack real agency, critical thought, or genuine emotional range, and they believe they are happy and free,
That happiness itself is the false consciousness. It's the very mechanism of control.
it's the ultimate pacifier. Forget bread and circuses. This is chemically or technologically enforced contentment. It prevents any possibility of revolution because people are too happy to see the need for change or even conceive of an alternative.
The perfect ideological prison, because the prisoners love their cage.
And Carol, being miserable, is somehow immune or resistant to this conditioning. Her misery is the objective evidence that the consciousness being pushed is in fact false.
This really flips the historical situation we discussed earlier with qui pluribus.
It does, in a really interesting way. Remember, Pope Pius IX in 1846 feared that getting rid of private property would destroy laws, government, society itself, the material and legal structure.
But in the show Pluribus, it seems like the elimination of private property, or whatever the imposed system did, didn't lead to chaos, but to a different kind of destruction.
Yes, the destruction of individuality, of agency, of the authentic self. The target of control shifts from managing material resources through law to managing consciousness itself through enforced happiness.
The fear isn't losing your land, it's losing your soul, basically.
In a secular sci-fi sense, yes. Control is still the name of the game. It's just achieved through ideological and perhaps technological means rather than purely economic and legal ones.
By the way, hey there. That's you. Do you have any other idea or question about this? Please write in comments.
It's a fascinating inversion. Now, we should also think about the world the aliens supposedly saved. What was Earth like before they showed up?
Well, the premise implies it was pretty bad, right? They intervened to save us. So we can infer a world deep in the crises of late-stage capitalism.
Exactly. And we should use this opportunity, this fictional premise, to critique the very system that Pope Pius IX was trying to defend back in 1846, and which presumably led Earth to the brink in the show's timeline.
Remember the U.S. motto, e pluribus unum, out of many, one, that promise of unity under liberal capitalism. How does that hold up?
Well, Marxist analysis argues it doesn't really. Capitalism fundamentally is based on competition. Competition between workers, between companies, between nations. It inherently fosters conflict and division, not unity.
It creates massive inequality, concentrates wealth, and leads
Imperialism, the constant need for expansion, for new markets, new resources, cheap labor. Capitalism can't stay contained. It has to grow, often through dominating other regions or peoples.
So the unum, the one, promised by e pluribus unum under capitalism is really an illusion. It's a fragile unity maintained for the benefit of the ruling class, masking underlying fragmentation and exploitation.
And the irony in Pluribus is that the space colony, in trying to fix this capitalist mess, ends up just repeating the core logic of imperialism.
How so?
They impose their system, their solution, from a position of superior power. They replace the fragmented chaos of competing capitalist powers with a single, unified, top-down control structure. It's just imperialism on a galactic scale. One dominant power dictating terms to the less powerful.
They didn't foster self-liberation, they just changed the management.
Precisely. And this whole scenario highlights a really important historical and theoretical distinction. It's the difference between utopian approaches to changing society and the Marxist approach.
What's the difference there?
Well, utopian socialists, thinkers before or alongside Marx, often believed you could design a perfect society on paper based on rational principles,
Yeah.
ethics, fairness, and then just implement it, often led by some enlightened elite or benefactor.
They focused on the ideal blueprint.
Right. But Marx argued that was backwards. You can't just impose a perfect system onto the wrong historical conditions. He focused on analyzing the actual material conditions, the class struggles, the internal contradictions of capitalism.
And argued that socialism or communism had to emerge from that struggle, from the working class becoming conscious and taking power. It couldn't be skipped or delivered from outside.
Exactly. The Pluribus system, being delivered fully formed from space, is the ultimate utopian project in that sense. It ignores Earth's specific historical development, the consciousness of its people, the need for internal struggle.
It tries to shortcut the whole messy process of revolution.
And the show seems to be suggesting that such shortcuts inevitably lead to dystopia, because a system imposed from above, no matter how benevolent its intentions, lacks the legitimacy and dynamism that can only come from genuine popular struggle and self-determination. It becomes rigid, controlling, unhappy, ironically.
So it functions as a critique not just of this specific fictional communism, but of any top-down imposed ideology that promises perfection while denying agency.
I think so. It reinforces the idea that true change has to be built from the ground up by the people involved.
By the way, if you liked and interested so far, please don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And so we can understand that if we should create more content like this or not. Thank you.
Yeah, that feedback really helps us figure out what topics you find engaging.
Okay, so let's try to bring these threads together now. We've looked at the history, the sci-fi premise, the Marxist concepts. What's the core paradox here, the Pluribus Paradox?
I think it boils down to this dual narrative we've traced.
First, you have the historical context. 1846, Pope Pius IX and Quic Pluribus. The establishment fears communism primarily because it threatens private property and the existing power structure built on that property. Control is maintained by defending the material base.
Right. The fear is material dispossession leading to social chaos. Then second, you have the sci-fi scenario in the show Pluribus. Here, an imposed system, maybe labeled communism, seems to have dealt with the property issue, but the result is still oppressive.
But the oppression isn't primarily material lack, it's ideological conformity. It's the demand for happiness, the suppression of authentic selfhood represented by Carol's misery.
Exactly. Control is maintained not by defending property, but by engineering consciousness. The threat shifts from losing your wealth to losing your very humanity, your ability to feel and think authentically.
So the show suggests that this forced happiness, this imposed utopia, is just another tool of control, a more insidious one perhaps.
It's incredibly effective, potentially. If you can make the population genuinely believe they are happy and content, even while stripping them of agency and critical thought, you create a stable, productive, compliant workforce. Perfect for the rulers, whether they're 19th century capitalists or 21st century space colonizers.
It's like the ultimate opiate of the masses, more powerful than religion ever was.
The irony is quite stark. The Pope feared communism would destroy society as he knew it. In Pluribus, perhaps that society was destroyed or radically altered, but the solution just instituted a new form of total control, dressed up as benevolence and happiness.
It traded one set of chains for another, maybe shinier set.
Which really makes you question the nature of progress and salvation when it's delivered externally.
And this leads us to the final point. The really provocative idea that seems to emerge from making Carol the miserable one, the potential key to resistance.
Yeah, the revolutionary figure isn't a charismatic leader bringing a new ideology or a warrior fighting for freedom in the traditional sense.
It's the person who simply cannot conform to the mandatory happiness, the one who feels bad when everyone else feels good.
So this is the thought we want to leave you with, listening to this deep dive. If the core resistance in Pluribus comes from Carol, the most miserable person on earth, does that imply something profound?
Does it suggest that the capacity for critical dissatisfaction, for genuine unhappiness, the ability to experience a supposedly perfect world and still feel that something is deeply wrong,
is that capacity, the single most revolutionary, the most fundamentally human element we possess, is our ability to reject contentment, to feel alienated even when we're told we shouldn't be, the ultimate engine for resisting any oppressive system, no matter how utopian it claims to be.
Is unhappiness the last bastion of freedom.
A heavy thought to ponder as we see where Vince Gilligan takes this story.
Absolutely. It's going to be fascinating to watch unfold.
Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. You may check the channel's playlist for more interesting contents. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye.